What's up guys, today we are reviewing a 2018 BMW 230i with a 6-speed manual transmission. This is the F22 generation of 2 Series. I have driven an M235i and an M245i xDrive before, and of course the F87 M2 and M2 Competition and M2 CS, but I've never driven a 4-cylinder powered 2 Series. This is powered by the 2-liter turbocharged B48 engine. It's an inline 4-cylinder, making 248 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. In this spec with a manual, this car should weigh between 3,300 and 3,400 pounds, making it one of the lightest 2 Series you can get, and the owner Nathan has done a few mods to this for the track. In fact, 24 hours ago, he was starting his day at Laguna Seca. So this has the British Birds suspension kit, which is essentially eye-box springs, revalved Bilstein monotube dampers, and this deactivates the OEM EDC or electronic damper control adaptive dampers. This car does include the track handling package, which includes the M240i's auxiliary radiators, brakes, EDC, and variable ratio steering. Finding one of these 230i's with a 6-speed manual and the track handling package is no easy task. Nathan mentioned he looked for 6 months for this combo and only found 2 cars during that time period, this being one of them. So if you can find one of these, going price is somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 range depending on mileage. This one only has 30,000 miles, so expect closer to that $25,000 mark. During my quick search on the internet yesterday, I was only able to find automatic equipped 230i's, and those were going for anywhere from $12,000 to $25,000 depending on spec and mileage. And this being a 2018, it is the facelifted version of the F22 generation. So we've got strut front, multi-link rear suspension, electric power steering, and an open differential on the rear axle. Nathan mentioned he's planning to add an LST in the near future. Nathan did mention that the Birds B2 suspension kit actually is not that much stiffer than stock. The spring rates are only up about 10% or so, and the ride height actually looks more or less OEM. But they did dial back the rebound damping quite a bit, so this should handle better over a bumpy surface. So we're going to actually hold down the traction control button for a few seconds. As Nathan pointed out, this turns off DSC, but it also puts it into comfort mode, which makes it easier, in his estimation, to control oversteer because of this throttle response mapping. In Sport or Sport Plus, it is quite touchy. And turning DSC off is the only way to turn off auto rev match for the 6-speed manual. We're on PS4S tires. First of all, that's not a very characteristic BMW sound, at least not one that I'm used to. I'm used to hearing that inline 6 smoothness, and with this, hello Bambi, we get actually not a bad sound. It sounds pretty good for a 4-cylinder, but it's very quiet from inside the cabin. Typical BMW long clutch throw, but it is easy to heel toe. I do like this throttle response in comfort mode. It's very direct without being overly sensitive. Feeling a little bit of one-tire fire there, very slight, but we are on a very damp road. The steering, it loads up reasonably well in the corners. The on-center feel isn't that great. There is a little bit of slop, but you know what? Once you get the car turned in, it feels very natural. Just not brimming with feedback. I will say though, 2 things I'm already very impressed by. Number 1 is the suspension. Very compliant. There is some body roll, but it's controlled. And number 2, the front end of this car feels very good. I mean, just taking a look at the engine from the side profile of the car, it's mounted quite far back because it doesn't have those extra 2 cylinders up front. So the weight balance of this car might just be perfect. It does take a little while for the revs to fall. A light flywheel might make this even more responsive, but overall this car's so easy to drive. The brakes feel good, very easy to heel toe. This engine makes really nice mid-range torque. Look at that. The front end sharpness is really impressive. And the car feels a bit lighter than an M2. It's a very nimble little 2 Series. In some ways, dynamically, it's more impressive than its 6-cylinder brothers. Woo. The suspension feels so good. It feels like this is what the OEM suspension should have been. The base M2 I drove a couple of times out here, felt a bit unsettled. But this, just so natural and nimble. Well, let's try putting this into Sport Plus and see how this feels. Okay, the steering immediately gets heavier. No more feedback though, it's just weight. Oh yeah, the throttle response is now heightened. Still quite easy to drive in Sport Plus. I actually don't think the throttle response is overly sensitive. This little B48 engine doesn't sound half bad. I just wish it had more volume to it. Brakes are very easy to modulate, which I love. You know, the steering is actually better than I expected here. There's actually a little bit of feedback coming through the wheel. I just love how eagerly this car turns into a corner. All of the controls of this car are very well balanced. Everything is natural. I can just hop into this car and start driving it hard immediately. There's almost no learning curve, which is not the case with the base M2. Handles these bumps, no issue at all. Such an easy car to drive. If you can buy one of these for $20,000 with low miles, good condition, good maintenance history, it's such a fun little car. This is the epitome of what made a BMW non-M car still a very fun enthusiast driver's car back in the day, and it wasn't even that long ago. This is a 2018 model year, and yet nowadays BMW doesn't give us anything like this. This might be the last generation of a true, fun BMW driver's car that's not an M3 or M2. Woo. I mean, the shifter is classic BMW, kind of long throws, rubbery, a bit vague, but it's all familiar. You always know what you're getting into when you drive a BMW manual. What is surprising though is just the handling of this car. Such good front end response. It's not razor edged in any way, shape, or form. There is a little bit of slop to the steering. The brakes have a tiny bit of mushiness, not a ton of initial bite. The clutch, the shifter, the throttle response, it's all slightly watered down compared to an M car, but everything feels one-to-one and congruent. Cars that perform just well enough but have a low learning curve really appeal to me. For example, the BRZ and GR86, both generations, extremely easy to just hop into it and start attacking 10/10ths. This has a similar feel, although it's softer around the edges. The responses aren't quite as sharp, but then again, it's a 2 Series. It's usable on a daily basis. It's got actually a reasonable back seat, and Nathan, being well over 6 feet tall, he mentioned that compared to the prior Gen 1 series, the 2 Series is the first car he sat in with the OEM seats with a helmet on where his head is not touching the ceiling. Once he adds a limited slip diff to this car, I think he's looking to get one from one of the M235 or 240 models. This car will be an absolute riot. It's already so fun. I think the responses could be sharpened up just a bit. But all in all, such a well-balanced package and a true BMW driver's car for such a reasonable price of sub $25,000. And let me repeat this, BMW doesn't make anything like this anymore. You can get a Z4 M40i with a manual transmission, but good luck finding one, first of all, and getting one at a reasonable price. So let me know what you think about the F22 generation of BMW 2 Series. Is the 230i the sweet spot for less than $25,000? What's a more well-rounded, better to drive, daily drivable BMW? A big shout out to Nathan. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you very soon.